have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock.
Hello. Thank you so much for listening to the Bold Moves podcast. I am the host, Mandy Bryce, and I am excited to share another fantastic episode with you. Today, I am chatting with DeNicea Hilton, who is a specialist in women's health after having struggles with her own. You might remember Stasha Washburn from a long time ago, the period coach. DeNicea has a lot of similar ideas, but a completely different personality, so I think that you should listen and check it out. Without further ado, here is DeNicea Hilton. Hello, everyone. Today I am chatting with DeNicea Hilton. Welcome to the show, DeNicea.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you. Thank you for being here. So you know that the name of my show is Bold Moves, and you wouldn't be here if you hadn't made some bold moves yourself. So why don't you share with us a little bit about who you are, your story, and then some of the risks that you've taken up to this point?
All right. So who I am today is definitely not who I was years ago.
That's a good thing.
Yes. I'm coming to learn and appreciate that we're changing at any given moment in any given second on a cellular level based on how we think, right? So let's see. It all started, like when I was in high school, actually just leaving high school, and I start there because it like all culminates into like what I do now and how I show up and how I am there for other women in the world.
Okay.
And so basically it all started very similar to a lot of other women and getting on birth control. And before going off to college, ended up having some issues there, and actually like realizing like, wow, I really didn't have a choice. I just kind of was like told to get on birth control and then did it. My choice was like, which one did you want? Like without like full disclosure. Then I went through my first year, and I actually ended up having issues with a breast tumor at the end of my first year of college, and having 2 surgeries because the tumor has started spreading.
Wow.
Yeah, like I was like, whoa, holy guacamole. How does a teenager handle this? So then you like fast forward, and I'm now in grad school. So I'm actually studying acupuncture and Oriental Medicine. So that's actually like my formal practice now, and what I started out doing in the clinic and whatnot, and have since expanded.
Mm-hmm.
But it was there when I really learned like, oh, healthy cycles, like, oh, you mean that this is, I'm not really supposed to have any pain during my cycles, or, oh, there's not supposed to be really any clotting or anything? Like, what is this that you're speaking of?
What is the sorcery of which you speak?
Yeah, like what? So from there, it was really because of studying Eastern medicine that I learned like, wow, we've accepted a lot of stuff as normal, but it's not really healthy. And then, I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do now that I graduated? And now I just like started this practice, and pretty gutsy move there. And so like during that process, turned even gutsier as far as like, okay, like this is what, I mean, you're trained to be a physician, not really to run a business. So like there's that. And then like the whole transitioning and like into blending, like having the being present in the physical brick and mortar, but then like really there's more to what I do and how I help. So like, how do I do that? So like transitioning and moving and pivoting my brand, establishing a brand, like a personal brand, and like doing all of that, and really seeing and changing and evolving with like seeing that happen in business as I'm self-developing.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I mean, a lot of meditation, learning that I like nature, like, you know, so like sometimes me and the bugs don't get along too well, but I'll still go out there. So it's been like this journey, and it's been really interesting. Some of those, and I'm sure we'll go into detail later, but those are like big, huge moments of my life of shifts happening. Like during that time of just kind of coming into expressing who I am today and realizing like, whoa, there's different ways that I'm expressing myself, and learning what those are and being comfortable with that
Sure.
has been really cool to kind of to observe and to be in, and always seeing that whoever I come across, they're a reflection of me, and like, woo, you learn a lot.
I'm sure, yeah. So I'm curious now, like, and this kind of goes along with how you're expressing yourself and what you're learning as you develop your brand. But I'm curious, like, what services you offer. I imagine you do some online, some you said brick and mortar. And then when you're finished studying, or at least with this next level of formal education, because I'm guessing you'll probably be studying forever, at least something, even if it's just personally. What that will mean as far as the development of your business and more things that you can offer and so on.
That's a really good question.
You're like, I'm still figuring it out as I go.
Pretty much. I mean, like, seriously, if I could show you, there's like a stack of books that like are around me that I would, start reading, and I feel like, okay, I get what I get, and then I'll like move on to the next studies. Like,
Sure.
it is studying to me. Like, even with the medicine, I say that I practice the medicine because
Mhm.
I'm still learning a lot. Like, we've graduated and I have my license and everything.
Mhm.
But there's so much to it, and like the medicine itself is so beautiful and in depth. And then you're like looking at it from this lens of, okay, so with some of the books, especially a lot of the books, that they're based, a long time ago, like
Mhm.
hundreds of years ago. And so then, and in particular regions, and you're like, okay, how does this apply to now? So like,
Yeah.
it's really cool to study how I see it is studying these things that Western medicine is seeing that Eastern medicine had already saw.
Okay.
But technology that has like been created now is able to kind of to see it, right?
Mhm.
So people believed in it, and people got healthy from Eastern medicine and everything, but then now like Western medicine's like, well, oh, you know what, we can do gut microbiome like checks,
Right.
and let's see what's there. And then now they're like, well, wow, we're seeing that these type of bacteria, like the ratios of bacteria, fungi, and yeast all play a role in your emotions, or they play a role in your immune system. And it's like, oh my gosh, this is so cool, because thousands of years ago, Eastern medicine knew this. And so
They just didn't have the science to test it.
it's just like, oh, that's how. Yeah. So it's really interesting. And like I kind of read and study from all different perspectives, and especially in the realm of menstrual cycles, right? So like, I'm going to go to your question. I had to lay that foundation because
Yeah.
because with menstrual health, I look at the menstrual cycle as giving you messages of what's going on, right?
Mhm.
And it's what's going on physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And so with that, I found myself in a place of, okay, I had to learn this, and I'm now finding that I'm having to teach that. So
Mhm.
I'd say I teach as I treat, because I would like for her to feel empowered and knowing like what's going on with her body, versus practice model where you come in and then you just spew out a bunch of stuff and then I just do things, right?
Mhm.
So um the women that I've worked with, they're like, they appreciate that much more, because they're like, oh, I actually can understand what's going on, and they can use that later on in their life, should things start to shift, and she can feel like, oh, I have some tools, right?
Mhm.
So the what happens is, in the process of somebody coming in, they might have some menstrual cycle issues. I say that actually it's the symptoms of the menstrual cycle or fertility challenges. That's what catches their attention.
Mhm.
But really, what has caught their attention is that there is some internal disharmonies be it physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual. And then through that transformation, through that process of actually using the cycle as a guide of what's like to know like what's going on with her really, then using that as a guide, the side effect is that she has a healthier cycle and that she might have improved fertility. Now, the way that it happens is if it's brick and mortar, it's with like using acupuncture. However, I've since learned that I can actually do a lot more and help even without the needles. So then that's when I started expanding into online. The feedback had been more of, wow, you're really like a mentor and a guide, a coach, quote unquote. And pretty much because we're going through food therapies, we're doing functional testing, functional medicine testing. We're using herbs, right? I'm teaching her how to actually cycle sync, like it's holistic menstrual cycle syncing. And so like really getting in tune with what's going on and then using that to help guide. So guide what you use and you learn like what you don't need. But it's all of that through individual one-to-one services. I'm starting a mentorship, a 30-day mentorship where that's like setting foundation of learn your cycle and learn how to holistically track for that and then sync with that in your everyday life. There's I wanted to do a mother-daughter edition, so that one's going to be coming soon as well, just to kind of help with the moms that say that like I don't really know what I didn't have these issues or I wasn't told this. So that's going to be really cool to kind of help set the stage for them. I'm also doing some workshops and some speaking as well, because the biggest thing that I saw was really it's the education part and the awareness. So those are the different ways that I find that, okay, I can help with menstrual cycles, healthy menstrual cycles everywhere. These are the different ways that I can do it.
Yeah, cool. I love that. So I personally just interviewed, I think about a year ago, someone who's known as the period coach, Stasha Washer.
Stasha.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so after I chatted with her, I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. I've been taking birth control, like hormonal birth control for over 20 years. And I finally stopped. And I'm still like, I even just asked a question in her Facebook group yesterday because I'm like, all right, what's going on? Like, how do I figure this out? And I feel like people are finally waking up to the fact that it's not normal to basically put yourself through menopause for decades. And I had the same experience you did where it was just like, I think I had bad skin and bad cramps. And it wasn't like, oh, let's see why you might have bad skin and bad cramps. They're like, here's birth control. And I'm 15 and not sexually active. And it's like wild. I'm like, oh, okay. Like, this is weird. But that's what everyone, like a lot of my friends did that too. And it was in like the mid 90s. So, I don't know.
Well,
like, what do you have to say, I guess?
So, I mean, this is where I've come to what is called as period bypassing. And so like with period bypassing, it's really the neglect and the underappreciation of the value of holistic menstrual education. And the reason why somebody would want to bypass you is because of comfort, convenience, or control. Those are the three I've narrowed it down to. So like, in the sake of our experience of going into the doctor's office, like it was period bypassing for not addressing why you have acne and why you're having cramps, right? I'm saying I was period bypassed and I period bypassed myself because I didn't question anything else. Like I just kind of went along with it. And then you have the period bypassing where it's school systems where you may not be taught, or it's in your household where your parent may not be comfortable. Or instead of helping to deal with it, then it's out of convenience, let's just do this. To go like even further, I think like period bypassing occurs as a form of control because it's a way to encourage women to dissociate from themselves. And so if you think about like the way that war might happen, or say like any movements, any control over certain groups, one of the best tactics to do is to get them to second guess themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so you can do that through dissociation. And then next thing you know, they're like, you're hearing it so much that maybe something is wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So then you start to see all these patterns of like, when it comes to periods, like something is wrong. Like we need to cover it up. We need to not, here's your cute little bag to put your pads and your tampons in so nobody sees that.
Yeah.
Or like go and whisper about it. Or, okay, if you're in pain, just a couple days, just do this. And then like, whatever, that's fine. And it's just like, it really exacerbates the whole, like what I've seen. And I see this with adults. And so I was just talking with somebody else actually today. I was like, I see this with adults. And then that's how I figured, okay, this is how I can work with teens and tweens. Because you're not being taught about what is all of you, right? Most parenting is actually do what I say, like don't question or anything, right? And that's scary to a lot of people. But then even scarier if you tell a girl about her menstrual cycle. If you tell her like your cycle is it's your biggest superpower. Like to know, holy smokes, I think differently, I feel differently throughout my cycle,
Mm-hmm.
and therefore I can go with that, and then I can be so productive. I can be who I am and be okay with that. Like
Mm-hmm.
that is major power.
Yeah.
So here goes the programming and the social constructs to block that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is how we're going to do it. We're just not going to teach her about her menstrual cycle. Instead, we're going to make it seem like she's hysterical, and that, oh, we're going to also say that you just have to keep doing everything the exact same way and be the exact same person every day. Matter of fact, why don't you be like this group of people? Like all of y'all be like that together, right?
Yeah.
And so then that's where social media now comes into play, and is saying, well, I'm going to show you this perfect IG picture
Yeah.
out of what you don't know could have been 500 to get that one shot, the extra filter.
And
And so,
heavily edited, and
mhm.
I was
But
crying
then,
right after, right before, and
right, right. But really, if you look at it and you play it all back, if you had learned about your cycle and how your cycle could show you what's happening physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, are you in sync with your true, authentic self? Are you expressing your true, authentic self? Are you being your true, authentic self? If you were, all of the outside stuff you would only be aware of. And then you would set healthy boundaries and make choices as to how it is that you would like to engage
mm-hmm.
with those outside things. They wouldn't necessarily control you as much and then make you think like, oh, I have to do this or I have to do that. Like, because you would just know, like, this doesn't
Sure.
feel right. And these major cramps are telling me something is up. Like, like that's not good. Like, so,
Sure. So aside from acupuncture and the herbal therapy that you're talking about, what else do you do to help people with this? Because for me, like thinking back to the doctor and how you described it as bypassing, at the same time in my life, I also was diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome. And the wild thing about that was that we're just going to go right into TMI territory. But at this time in my life, I would have a bowel movement like once every week and a half. So like
oh,
it
wow.
was not uncommon for me to be 7 to 12 days, like once every 7 to 12 days use the bathroom. And nobody, like they told me to have more Raisin Bran, and they gave me like fiber bars and other supplements, but they never asked me like what else I was eating, which you don't have to be a doctor or a medical person to know that what I was eating was crap. Like I
Mhm.
would have multiple candy bars every day. I
Oh,
rarely
wow.
ate something that didn't come from like a can or a box or some sort of wrapper. Like it wasn't fruits and vegetables and stuff. And nobody said like, hey, do you ever eat vegetables? Or like, and now I don't have any problems. I'm very regular. TMI
Mhm.
again, but sorry. And I don't like take any medications whatsoever. And it's like, really, I could have just like had some vegetables back in the day and I could have avoided all of that pain.
Yes.
It's wild. And I think it's that whole thing where it's just like convenience. It takes a lot of time for a doctor to sit down and like, hey, make a food journal for a week. Let's go over it. Let's talk about what you're eating. And it's a lot easier to just be like, have some fiber bars and some Metamucil. Like, good luck.
Yeah. Right. I'll see you in like 3 months. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We'll see how it's going and give you more medications. Like, it's
Yeah.
crazy.
Well, it's so to answer your question, right? You're like, well, what else do you do? So, in taking your case, like your situation, experience, I mean, a lot of it is that's where the mentorship and the guidance comes from, and the coaching part too. It's like it's going through the lifestyle evaluation and making the changes. Accountability for her is huge,
Mm-hmm.
because they're even the ones I've had come in that'll be like, "Oh, I'm doing everything like quote unquote right." Right,
Right.
right. I don't think that there's a right or a wrong. I just think that there's what's appropriate and what's beneficial for you and supportive to you and what's not. So even then, you could think that you're doing the greatest thing. You could be like, I'm all keto, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, great. Yet you're still coming to me because you have a problem with your menstrual cycle. So that's not supporting you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So something about that may not be supporting you when it comes in the form of your nourishment.
Mm-hmm.
We need to adjust it. Let's figure this out, right?
Right.
So I will say that for those doctors out there too, that it's also in the way that the system is built, or as it is right now. I mean, I feel like it can totally change. It's just that the change might have to come from within them, like
Mm-hmm.
other medical doctors pulling together and saying, this is what we want to do. And I mean, you're seeing a shift then where some are not taking insurance anymore, or they're adopting other practice models because they do want to spend more time with their patients.
Mm-hmm.
So under the common model, yeah, their time is like 2.5, maybe 4.5 minutes to get in and do what they need to do and move on to the next one,
Mm-hmm.
which as a patient may not support what it is that you're looking for in that type of relationship or what you want in terms of your health. And so, like, I do feel for them when it comes to that,
Sure.
which is why I really like what it is that I do, as far as really taking the time to review things. Like, where you're tracking and I'm reviewing it,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking about what is it that what's easily like an easy step for you to take. And so it's like a series of all these steps, as that strategist. So that's why I call myself like the holistic period and fertility strategist.
Mm-hmm.
And because we're literally strategizing based on where you're at and what's going on in your everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Like, you might be working, you may have kids, you may have a partner, you're like really living this full life. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like having to navigate what, like I said, is not supporting what your ultimate goal is. Because really, if we look at the cycle as your signs of what's going on, you're out of harmony.
Mm-hmm.
So all of what you're doing that you think is like great and grand right now is still not working for you. And so, so we're having to like navigate that. So through the mentorship, that's a great starting point,
Mm-hmm.
because it's having to be an observation of your cycle, and I'm working and walking the women through
Mm-hmm.
what to track and why we're doing that, and the importance of each one and what happens during the phases and whatnot. And then through the one-to-one, like, I'm really just focused on her, and then it can be hyper personalized at that point.
Sure.
So it can run the gamut between those two, as far as like really learning and really getting into, like I said, just observing, like, and becoming aware of what's really working for you and what isn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. Now, I know you mentioned, women, and obviously our cycle and fertility is all something that is unique to women. I'm curious how you came to go onto this focus and if you know what your purpose is.
How did I get there? Um, it was because of realizing in class, like realizing in class, like that huge gap of
Mm-hmm.
this is what a healthy cycle is and this is what's a normal one. And it really stuck to me. Women's health stuck to me in general.
Mm-hmm.
So in school, I was the one who wanted to see the moms coming in that were pregnant. Like I wanted to help with that.
Mm-hmm.
In postpartum, it just, I think that's just been something for me that just has really stuck.
Yeah.
And it really, really, really stuck when I was like, okay, I'm going to put my toe in there and see what happens if I say, because when I first started, I would only say women's health.
Okay.
So then I switched it and was like, no, I help women with their periods. And then it became like, and then I'd get the ladies coming over and whispering to me and stuff. And
Yeah.
then I took that as like, one, oh, it's great that she feels comfortable talking to me about this. Then I took it as two, I think I might have to be louder. And so, so like, seriously, because if that's how she's feeling, and then you kept hearing the same stories of, I've been dealing with this for like 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, 12 years. And I'm
Right.
like, holy guacamole. And then I started realizing the greater, which was with how I got to the period bypassing, like I was saying, it's beyond just having a healthy cycle. It's literally, what can I do to hold that space and create that space for women to really own and be who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm using the menstrual cycle as a tool
Right.
to do that, right?
Yeah.
So like, for my fulfilling and feeling like what's my purpose, it's that, like, to hold that space for the creators in life.
I
Like,
love that.
women create, and it's not just the nations through the other human beings that we create.
Right.
Right, that is one form of creation, but we are really creators. And to be able to help hold that and really help guide and help her, empower her to use herself as her own guide. I'm really just helping and holding her hand and saying, look, this is how you can do it, and
Yeah.
I'm holding it there. But through that creativity, like helping her go from that concept into manifesting it in whatever way it is that it is for her, and for her to like shine and like own it, and helping her see her own purpose and what it is that she's doing. And it's like, you see the ripple effect. Like,
Yeah.
I think the quote about like happy wife, happy life, or happy mom, happy home, and all that,
Yeah.
like, they're a little bit weird to me in the way that the words are being used, but
Mhm.
actually I get what they're trying to say. It's pretty much like, if she is happy, it's that energy. It's
Mhm.
that higher vibration energy that goes into everywhere. Like, it goes
Yeah.
into social relationships, it goes into families, it goes into homes. And so that's that power
Mhm.
I'm talking about, like, huge power. And so it's like, it's not about just getting what you want, like, and like, oh, give her the car and she'll be happy. It's
Right.
like,
She'll stop complaining or whatever.
right, like, it's not that, but like, if you can help, and if I can help her to see who she is,
Mhm.
and help her to see that it's safe to be that person, and like, to shed all of these old thought patterns and the old programming, or like to even become aware that she had been like controlled and shackled, if you will, by these constructs, and some of it intentional, some of it unintentional. But to really sit there and like observe and honor the evolution is like, it's amazing. Like
Yeah,
it's
beautiful.
completely, yeah. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, like, look what you did. Like, it's like, that is awesome. And all it took was you just being like, I can't handle this period anymore. Like, that's how it all started. But
Yeah.
but you got so much more, and they're confident and like so self-aware. And it's like, yes, like, this is amazing.
I love that. So where in the world are you in, like, physically, if people are local to you where they could work with you, or where can we find you online if everything you're saying sounds amazing and we want to find you?
Well, I am physically in Florida and the Tampa Bay area, specifically in Palm Harbor,
Okay.
is my office. So it's over by the water, west coast of Florida. It's nice and breezy sometimes. And then,
Sounds lovely.
and then online is DeNiciaHilton.com.
Okay.
And that, yeah, is at DeNicea Hilton on social media, like with Facebook and Instagram. That is me. And yeah, like if you're not local, like we can totally make some changes and really get you on the way and in your path, like totally doing it virtually. That's what I do now with with some ladies. And it's really cool to see, like, it's like, wow, transformations are happening, like despite like which way that it
Right.
happened, it just happens, you know?
Yeah, that's very cool. I'm curious because you said that, like, if we could see panned out a little bit further, you'd have books on either side of you. I'm wondering if there are any that you'd recommend to our listeners or viewers who might, just be interested in anything that you're interested in. It doesn't have to be on this topic. It can be anything that you'd recommend, from fiction to business or on this topic.
Yeah. How many do I get?
Go as long as you'd like, my dear.
I will say the Tao of Pooh.
Okay.
Um, yeah, I'm super late to the Winnie the Pooh game. So, I watched Christopher Robin and fell in love, and I was like,
Aw.
holy guacamole. And I felt like, I was like, ah. And then I came across the book, The Tao of Pooh. And especially because I was already touching Taoism, and then for it to
Yeah.
come in the form of Winnie the Pooh, I was like, shut up. So that one's it's really great. And I say that because, and that one and the 7 spiritual laws of success,
Okay.
those two, and they're big to me. They're small books, literally small books, but
Yeah.
huge. Took me forever to finish. And the Tao of Pooh, I'm still reading. But like, it's a big part of both of them is just like, it's this harmony, like, of taking action, but then being still,
Sure.
or like being still, there is action that's being done. And then like, how do you set goals, and especially if business owner, right? Like
Yeah.
we can become so like tunnel visioned in what it is that we want to do. We're like, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to do it like this, exactly
Yeah.
this way. And, but then we're like pushing,
Hmm.
right? And then there's that subculture of this whole hustle hard,
Oh, yeah. That's
right?
important.
Yeah. And so like, but really by universal law, it would be with ease. And
Right.
like, if you're in alignment with yourself and what your purpose is and whatnot, then it's like, it would happen easily. So
Hmm.
sometimes I use that as my checkpoint. Like if things seem like they're just not clicking, like,
Hmm.
and it makes you go, geez, what the heck? Then that's when I realized like I'm attaching to the outcome and I'm attaching to the process versus, okay, what would I like to see? And then still being like just taking smaller steps
Mm-hmm.
while delicately balancing the small step that I take. And then is this the direction, or like allowing something better or bigger to possibly come in?
Yeah.
Is what I would, those two would be my big ones, big little
Fabulous.
bucks.
I love it. Thank you for sharing those. Now, you talked about one of the things that you love about those books is kind of doing a self-check on, like if you're feeling stuck or things aren't going right, how you can see if maybe you're attaching too much to it. I appreciate hearing about difficult times because I feel like that's where a lot of learning and stuff comes from. So I'm curious about like the scariest moment you've ever survived so far.
Serious moment in business stuff.
In business or life, whatever you feel like you want to share.
One of the scariest, I'll say, like in one of the scariest and personal was like finding the breast tumor.
Sure.
And like, cause my mom used to tell us all the time, like, make sure you're doing your self exams. And so I was like, okay, and that was actually how I found it.
Yeah.
And, that was like literally like screaming, like, well, you do that moment of like, did I just feel, is that, and then you're like, and I just go, Mom, like, run in there. And so that was definitely like, holy guacamole, like what in the world is happening? And I'm a teenager.
Yeah.
And then now I'm like going in for surgery, and like, you get that call of like, we need to reschedule your appointment. And I told my mom, I was like, Mom, if they're rescheduling for you to come in sooner, something's up. Like, right.
Yeah,
And
that would scare
so,
me too.
yeah. So like I went in for that one, and that's when they told me like, well, there's this thing that's called the safety of margins and safety of margins that we are looking at. And we take extra tissue outside of the tumors to check that tissue. And actually this one has started spreading, and it's this type of tumor. And I mean, when I tell you like the type of tumor that it was supposed to be a rare tumor that's mostly found on the left side. Mine was on the right, mostly found in women in like their 50s. I was 17, 18. So like, yeah, it was like, what do you mean? So yeah, like you're going in for that. And then, I did not like needles. Even to this day, I don't really like needles. I know I practice acupuncture, but it's completely different. Like, it's completely different. So I mean, even then it's like when you realize too, like how much, like sometimes I wonder if they really understand like the patient practitioner relationship, or like even with the nurses and stuff. Cause now that I think about it, like I do remember like them trying to give me the anesthesia, and I'm like, this lady, I'm telling her where to go. Like I'm telling her where my veins are really good, and I have rolling veins, quote unquote, or something like that. And so like trying to explain this to her, but she wouldn't listen. So she's continuing to go wherever she wants to go, and it's painful.
No wonder you don't like needles.
I mean, even before that, right? Like it's just, but it's like if I'm telling you this and I'm directing you, and then to have the anesthesiologist come in and then give her something to calm her down, as if like I was the problem.
Right.
And it's like, no, you're not understanding. I'm telling her, like, it was, so that whole dynamic most likely plays a huge role into how it is that I work with women today. Because I would not want her to feel like I'm not listening to you.
Right.
Like I may have an interpretation of what's going on, but you, like, right. So to just go in there and like listen. So that one, and even then after that, I like switched surgeons. So, cause I was like on a watch, I had to like have to get scans done every so often to make sure that it wouldn't grow back. But then now they want to check the other side, and there ended up actually being a small tumor that was found. And instead of just doing a needle biopsy, they went ahead and did a lumpectomy, just because of my history at that point.
Sure.
Which thankfully that actually turned into like a benign like fibroadenoma, that maybe if I had left it alone, it would have gone away on its own because they can come and go.
Sure.
But it was like that experience with that practice was completely different. Like the surgeon sat down and like really talked to me and spent time with me. Their nursing staff was completely different. The way that they put me under, I was like, I felt like just amazing. Like they had my glasses on my face when I woke up. Like it was just that those other things of care, like those other touches of care that was really awesome, coming from that practice. But I mean, it was scary. And I do think about it sometimes now, because I was told like, oh, if you get pregnant, that would be the time to really, to just really pay attention that it could come back if there were dormant cells and stuff. But now my thinking is otherwise. Like I'd much rather think about healthy body, healthy cells, and then like that doesn't necessarily have to mean that comes true, right? So whenever that time comes, then that's how I'm going to be thinking about everything, and deep meditations and whatnot. And yes, I will still check, but that's not going to be my expectation. So, changing that. As far as business goes, scariest, I would say starting. And that's like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Like,
I think that probably is forever.
well, it's like, oh my gosh, like sometimes we forget like that we may be looking at these larger businesses that have been around for how long?
Right.
And so not only how long, but like the employees, the number of people that help run that business.
Yeah.
And so I had to really get comfortable with myself, like, and then get comfortable with myself and communicate that was a huge thing. Like I'm an introvert, so I'm more introverted, I should say, but like, but like learning, it's okay for me to say, oh, just text me. Like, I'd much rather you text me, right? Or we plan a call. Like, so like there's that subtle difference there, and just like, I don't know, I think I feel like maybe people understand, like they appreciate that more. Cause then that when I'm with you, like I'm on fire, like at that point, like, and so I've been told like, you just light up and you go and you do your thing. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. So, it's that ever learning, like learning and then staying to who I am, and the challenge of, okay, what's something different that may help me? Like it's that discernment of I'm being exposed to looking at something this way possibly could be helpful versus like, oh no, now I'm just comparing and I'm trying to do that because it looks like that works better, but it really may not. So it's like, that's where coming and feeling into your body comes in handy. So I'll know a little bit better, like, ooh, that did not feel right. Like I could feel something real quick, like somewhere in my body reading something. And I'm like, I don't know. And then I may test it, like, they'll be like, well, maybe I'll go ahead and do it. And then it don't work. It does not work. Oh, like, dang it. How much time did I waste on that? Like, it's like
I'm curious, in these scary situations, whether it was the personal one with your health or, starting your business, how do you push past that fear and just go to the next step? Or what advice would you give if you had a client doing something scary, how to
Yeah.
succeed?
So I feel like this is a two pronged look at that. So
Okay.
one might, and I say it like from the before after, like, right. So
Mm-hmm.
there's the transition. So there's the before, and it becomes like, okay, well, which one do you want more? Like, are you attached to that more? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're uncomfortable because clearly you sought help, right?
Right.
And so, um, one of the things that I ask is like, what's the benefit?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I say that even for, even for patients and clients that end up working with me, and we might be hitting a wall on something, and, or I hear repeated patterns
Mm-hmm.
happening. And then oftentimes it's framed in a different way, but they're receiving a benefit
Mm-hmm.
if they stay there. And so it's having to like observe be real with yourself. Like, what are you receiving
Mm-hmm.
from that? Right. And then being able to take what you might be receiving, and because you're perceiving that as a benefit,
Mm-hmm.
but that's actually something else. So is that something else actually more of what you want? If that is, then why don't we go to that? And then we
Mm-hmm.
can change the behavior. Right.
Oh, okay.
So like, e- example might be someone who cramping. Let's just say it's cramping.
Okay.
Horrible cramps. You've had these for 10 years, right? And then you may or may not be using birth control, but the cramps are still happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we're talking, and I'm like, okay, well, Mandy, like, let's take a look at what you're eating. Go ahead and log that for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then also go ahead and start this journaling exercise, and then we'll talk. You come back at our next meeting, I find out either you halfway did the logging or you didn't at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm asking you, like, okay, so what's up? Like, what happened? Out of that conversation could be, oh, well, I just knew I was eating crap, so I didn't write it down. Fair enough. So that means then that you're even judging yourself and saying like what's good or bad. But really, we just need to know what you're taking in.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like and then also that speaks to a relationship to food that you might have.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we have to go into that. But then like, okay, well then if we say, let's try this again, and then the next
Yeah.
week that happens, I'm like, all right, so what benefit is it to you to be right there? Like to eat
Mm-hmm.
that way or whatever. Who knows what you might come up with? But some examples might be, it was just such a hard week, like at work. And then all I could think about and all I wanted was cake and cookies, or I just wanted to drink or whatever. So really, that's actually the issue,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is that it could be that social aspect. And if you're used to eating out with friends or used to eating out with your family, but it may not be conducive to you, the benefit is actually the relationship that you're trying to have with those people,
Right.
not necessarily, right, like the just eating of the crap. Like you can change that. So
Mm-hmm.
then for some people it's like I might lose my people
Mm-hmm.
if I change the way that I eat. So like that's a huge shift for some people,
Yeah.
when they realize that. um so there's that. And then also the second thing is like, even though this is happening and I'm experiencing this, um, I ask myself two things. Like, one is like, what is the goodness that's coming out of this?
Mm-hmm.
And then also, how did I create this? Like, what role did I play in creating this?
Oh, I like that personal responsibility aspect.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
it's tough, but
It is. I mean, it really is. Because you're taking ownership for it. So it's like, and you can't blame other people. They're
Right.
responding to you. So, um, if I could look at it and be like, oh, yeah, maybe I could have done this, or maybe I could have done that. Um, and then you're still playing that game of like not being so hard on yourself
Mm-hmm.
that you're not forgiving, or like you're not honoring that you were learning too.
Sure.
So it's kind of like, I know I did some things. I just learned though that wasn't the appropriate like way
Best
to
choice.
take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. Great advice. Thank you so much for that. I'm curious if there's anything else, like advice, lessons you've learned, or anything else that you think you would like to share with our listeners or viewers. I'd like to give you the opportunity to share anything that you haven't said so far that you would like to pass along.
Let's see here. Because everyone's being bold, right? And like boldly taking steps. And I would say just to see, like, as much as we might see a grand vision
Mm-hmm.
or like see something bigger, that it really is like taking that one step. And like my boyfriend's mom reminded me of this, to take the break and celebrate the smaller steps,
Yeah.
because I can get mentally hard on myself for something not turning out like the way I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that goes back to like, is that really what was supposed to happen? Like,
Right.
so it's like, oh no, just smaller steps and celebrating like each of those steps. I'll say what has really helped me was actually finding like a group that celebrates that. Like, that's all we focus on. Is the whole focus literally daily is like, because we understand like beyond law of attraction, but like quantum physics, like what you focus
Mm-hmm.
on is what's going to grow. So it's like, that's all we focus on, and share, and like be that in a group and in a community that does that. We're not acknowledging that these other things don't exist, and that
Right.
because once you label it, it's like that's how you're interpreting it. But like,
Mm-hmm.
we acknowledge that they exist. It's just that we choose to focus on this element, and then like being able to direct and like help each other direct and support, like, yeah, like this this is good. Like,
Yeah, that sounds like a really impactful and amazing group of people to put together and to be
oh
doing
yeah.
that, just constantly celebrating each other's even baby steps. That sounds really uplifting and fabulous.
Oh yeah. It is. It really, really is. Oh my gosh. Like, yeah, like at first I felt kind of silly because that's how long I had been going, like not doing that. Like I said, I
Yeah,
was in more of the, okay, what can I do better? Like, what
yeah.
can I do better? Like that's what drives me, is like, what can I do better?
Hmm.
But like, to have someone literally looking at me and saying, you mean that you actually you did a call and just kind of like knew what to say? And I was like, yeah. She's like, oh my gosh, yes. And I'm like, what? Like,
I love it.
but to have like somebody who's like mirroring and watching you, and to say, like, to be able to say that to you, it's like, whoa, okay. Yeah, that's so true. Like, wow, like I really appreciate that,
Yeah,
because it's really uplifting. And as silly as it might seem, it's like we're supposed to have fun.
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
so what fun, like how much fun can I have? Like, what can I do? And I sometimes be really silly, like serious.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of my undertone, but I'm a goofball, really. And so like, so it's just like, okay, well,
Staying in touch with the inner goofball.
yeah.
I love that. All
Be
right.
just be the inner goofball. Like,
All right. So my last question may be involving your inner goofball. It's one of my favorites to ask, and it is if 8-year-old DeNicea had a crystal ball. And actually, I just got a crystal ball yesterday, so I didn't even think about it till right now, but I can take it
Ooh,
out.
it's beautiful.
Thank you. Yes. If you could look into a crystal ball when you were 8 and see where you are now, everywhere you've been in between, and then maybe your foreseeable future of, what's coming up in the next couple weeks, what plans you have, God willing, that you're able to, go through with whatever it is you're excited for. On a scale of 1 to 11, how excited would little DeNicea be to see where you are now and where you're heading? Your face was priceless.
Because I feel like that's what she'd be like, oh my gosh, like what? I'm gonna go and read my book now. Like it's like, so I think like to see, yeah, like for what's coming, like that I can see right now, like coming up, like she'd be like, yo, I give that about a 10. Like you could, because you built in your reading time to yourself. But like totally going out there and like I'm working on this online summit about period bypassing, and my new podcast is starting.
Congratulations.
And thanks. And this mentorship is starting. So like literally all within like these next few weeks. So it's like, yeah, we're about to like really rock it and like get this all going, or it is going, I should say. So,
I love that. Well, don't forget to celebrate all those baby steps on the way.
Yeah,
thank
you.
Of course. Well, I look forward to seeing all of these things come to fruition on social media and so on. And thank you so much for taking the time to share with my audience and I all of the amazing things that you're doing in the world.
Oh, thank you so much for allowing me to do so. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. What a warm personality, right? I hope you enjoyed the interview as much as I enjoyed interviewing her. I would love for you to check out all of the show notes. That's where you can find links to DeNicia's website and social media pages, as well as all of the books she recommended. Everything that we talked about will be linked in there. So if you head to either MandieBrice, mandybryce.com, or boldmovespodcast.com, that is where you will find the show notes. I would love it if you shared this to anyone who has a period, which is probably half the people that you know-ish, or anyone who you think would find this entertaining or informative, inspiring, or in any way valuable. My goal is to help as many people as I possibly can, and I can't do it alone. I need your help spreading the word. So if you don't mind doing that, I would really appreciate it. While I'm asking for favors, I would of course love it if you also subscribed so that you don't miss an episode, including an awesome one coming up with a challenge from DeNicea. And I would also love it if you left me some great reviews on Apple Podcast. That also helps using the algorithm. If you tell Apple you're loving this, Apple will hopefully start suggesting this to other people and spread the word for us. All right, that is all for today. Again, share, subscribe, leave ratings, and as always, be bold and have a sparkly day. Bye-bye.